members, representatives from government agencies, development partners, industry stakeholders, civil society organizations, and other invited resource persons who have joined us this morning. So thank you so much, and apologies for the late start, but I'm glad that everyone is here. Despite having, I think I'm the only representative at this moment here, but I'd like to acknowledge Representative Iris Marie de Mesa Montes of 4K. She was here earlier, but I believe she may be back, and I think ang COSN naman dito. So thank you so much for coming. May I now request everyone to please rise for the invocation.
Let us put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Lord, may your goodness and love be present amongst us today. Come bless our gathering with unity, hope, and vision. Lord, we pray for unity. Build in us all a deep respect for one another, so that your church may be one. Lord, we pray for hope. Come stir your hope within our hearts and renew our faith. Lord, we pray for vision. May your vision fill our lives as we seek to reveal your love. We ask all this in the glorious name of Jesus. Amen.
So thank you. And at this point, I'd like to recognize the presence of the members who are joining us in this meeting. But I'd like to now direct the committee secretariat to acknowledge the resource persons present with us today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Joining us today in this meeting are the following. From the government sector, from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, we have the Manager for Environmental, Social, and Governance Supervision Surveillance Group, Ms. Lyneth Pichua, and Office of the General Counsel and Legal Services, Legal Officer 1, Attorney Mark Nico A. Acabado. From the Climate Change Commission, we have Attorney Megan Mary F. Mateo. From the Commission on Higher Education, we have Attorney Hazel Mendoza and Engineer Ashir Kalulut. From the Department of Budget and Management, we have the Chief of the Budget and Management Specialist, Mr. Reynaldo L. Moreno. From the Design Center of the Philippines, we have Ms. Rose Costuna from the Policy Office. From the Department of Education, we have Director from the Bureau of Curriculum Development, Mr. Peter Mark D. Magsalin. From the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, we have Senior Undersecretary Henry L. Yap. From the Department of Labor and Employment, we have OIC Assistant Secretary, Ms. Adeline T. De Castro. From the Department of Public Works and Highways, we have Attorney Ryan Nino Tan. From the Department of Tourism, we have the Director for the Office of Tourism Standards and Regulations, Mr. Virgilio Magigad. From the Department of Trade and Industry, Assistant Division Chief of the Bureau of Philippine Standards, we have Ms. Mayra Magabalin. Senior Trade Industry Development Specialist, Ms. Maricon Agibiador, and Attorney Kai Pasahol. From the National Academy of Science and Technology, we have S&T Fellow, Ms. Ain G. Torres. From the Philippine Statistics Authority, we have Ms. Jomi C. Lianeta and Attorney Divina Jesusa T. Iris. From the Public-Private Partnership Center, we have Ms. Tashana Dominique M. Villarante and Ms. Maria Beatriz N. Quintos. From the Small Business Corporation, we have Mr. Angelito B. Acupan, Senior Vice President. From the Circulo, we have Executive Director Ana Reyes. From the Philippine Alliance for Recycling and Material Sustainability, Mr. Jesus G. Reyes, the President. And Project Coordinator Derek Casio. Finally, from the U.S. ASEAN Business Council, we are joined by Ms. Catherine Salazar. That is all. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. We also have Ms. Gwyneth Ann Palmos from the United Nations Development Program Philippines. She's the program's analyst for climate action. That is all, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you so much, ComSec, and thank you everyone for your continued participation and your valuable inputs to this legislative initiative. I believe that it is going to be a landmark bill considering what we are facing today. But even as a change in mindset of how we can create a more sustainable economy for the Philippines. But I'd like to welcome you all to the second technical working group deliberation on the proposed Circular Economy Act. I want to thank the chairperson, A. Legarda, for the trust and confidence, as well as with the committee secretariat for the work that has been done with the first technical working group. The first technical working group meeting was on Feb 24, and since that session, we have received written comments from over dozens of agencies and organizations, including NAST, DTI BPS, DTI SBC, DSHUD, GCG, PARMS, UNDP, DLG, DepEd, RECS, and Circulo, among others. So that level of engagement tells us something important, that this bill matters to all of you and it matters to our country. So I'd like to share where we are again. So the Philippines generates over 21 million metric tons of solid waste per year, yet our material recovery rate remains below 30%. We import more raw materials than we recover domestically, and our MSMEs, which comprise 99.6% of all enterprises, operate largely in a linear take, make, dispose model. Not because they choose to, but because there is no national framework guiding and supporting their transition to circularity. Meanwhile, our ASEAN neighbors have moved ahead. Thailand has adopted its circular economy strategy in 2023. Vietnam is finalizing its own. And Indonesia has embedded circular economy into its national development plan. This bill is environmental as well as economic, but it's also reducing our dependence on imported raw materials, building resilient domestic value chains, creating green jobs, and positioning the Philippines competitively, especially as we chair the ASEAN for this year. So here's what we accomplished in the first technical working group. During our first session, we achieved several important agreements. We adopted the recommendation of Representative Veloso Tuazon to reference the PAP for SCP in the Declaration of Policy. We aligned the circular economy framework with the Philippines' nationally determined contributions and the National Adaptation Plan, per the DENR Climate Change Services suggestion. We agreed that the lead agency for drafting the NCES should be DepDev, but I believe they're not here. They're not here today. So a point for discussion later. In coordination with concerned agencies, rather than enumerating every participating body in the statute, we expanded the priority industries for sector roadmaps to include plastics and packaging, construction and built environment, mobility and transport and tourism, and this is following UNDP's recommendation. And we agreed to identify provisions that may be deferred to the IRR to preserve regulatory flexibility. Here's what we heard from the stakeholders since the Technical Working Group 1. These are the comments we received over the past 3 weeks that converge on several themes. And I wanted to put it on the table for today's deliberation. On the definitions and scope, we saw NAST, PARMS, and DTI BPS all flagged that many of the 40-plus defined terms in Section 4 appear only once or twice in the bill. National Scientist Cruz's advice from TWG1 holds. We should streamline the bill and defer highly technical definitions to the IRR. I propose we take a hard look at which definitions are essential to the statute and which can be moved to the implementing rules. So that's the first one. Second, on institutional amendments, institutional agreements and lead agency. This remains the most sensitive question. DepDev Secretary Balisacan has formally communicated his position that the implementation and regulatory functions proposed for DepDev are more appropriate for DENR. He proposes DENR as the Circular Economy IAC chair, with the Economic Development Committee providing secretariat support. But at the same time, multiple agencies, including DTI, DLG, DOST, want clarity on their respective roles. So today, we need to resolve this. and my position for this is pragmatic. We need a governance structure that is lean, accountable, and does not create a new bureaucracy, whether that becomes DepDev or not. On the harmonization with existing laws, we have DTI, US ABC, DepDev, and PIDS that all stress that the bill must complement, not duplicate, RA 9003, which is Ecological Solid Waste Management, and RA 11898, which is EPR. It's Extended Producer Responsibility, and the PENCAS Act. To this, we agree, and the substitute bill already references these laws extensively. But we must be vigilant against creating parallel or conflicting regulatory regimes. On MSME protection and just transition, I believe there's much discussion for this, but SBC, DTI, PARMS, and the private sector representatives emphasize that mandatory obligations must be paired with adequate support mechanisms and phase timelines. So the current draft already exempts MSMEs from mandatory coverage while allowing voluntary participation with support. I think this is the right balance, but we should strengthen the support for these provisions for a phased just transition timeline. On the enforcement, our first draft included graduated penalties from written warnings to fines of 50,000 to 500,000 pesos. I have heard the concern that Section 44 needs clear drafting. We will clean that up today. But a bill without enforcement teeth is a bill that may not be taken seriously. So I believe we need both incentives and accountability. I think on a purely incentive framework, it would be more feasible for different kinds of bills. But for the Circular Economy Act, there may be a need for a certain level of accountability. On the dedicated fund, which is a CEIIF, I think several agencies have asked about the funding mechanism for this. The CEIF has structured draws from the GAA appropriations, the agency savings, ODA, and climate finance. It's also partly EPR scheme. The EPR scheme proceeds will possibly even go to this circular economy fund. And there are other lawful sources that we may source from. I think the practical approach is this, and it should not depend on new taxes. So for today, what I expect from today's session from all of you is that we will go through the substitute bill section by section instead of line by line. We will be focusing on issues I have just outlined. And I ask all resource persons and the fellow TTLG members who may be here a bit later on to be specific and constructive. So tell us not just what concerns you, but what language you propose. So if you have a problem with a provision, please bring us a solution. So when you have an issue with a certain section, be it substantive, please give a proposed solution with foundation and language. So our goal today is to produce a near final working draft, as we know that we will be on break tomorrow, but I'm sure okay lang Comsec na magtrabaho tayo during the break, that hopefully by when Congress assumes ready na po ito, we can submit it to the committee kay Chair for approval. The 20th Congress has limited time. We cannot afford delays, and this bill has stalled in the 19th Congress, as we are all aware. So this measure was already approved at committee level before and failed only because of time constraints. We will not and cannot let that happen again. So again, this is a survival strategy for our country, and we are the third most vulnerable to climate change, but the number one most at-risk country in the world. We import 60% of our raw materials. We lose billions of pesos annually to inefficient resource use. And the question is not whether we transition to a circular economy. The question is whether we do so by design, with a clear framework that protects our workers, empowers our MSMEs, and secures our economic future, or whether we let that transition happen to us, which usually happens unevenly and unjustly. So we shall choose the former, and I believe everyone in this room agrees to. So with that, let us begin. If I may, I'll just do a quick comprehensive bill analysis before we start with the discussions. I'd like to thank COMSEC for really putting up a working substitute bill with us, and I think we cleaned it up a bit, which we sent, I think she sent in your group chat, the Survivor. But I wanted to go through that as we will be discussing that. Just so you know where it's coming from, where the strengths and weaknesses of the bill. So the assessment of the draft working substitute bill, which is as of the last TWG. So it started out with a numbered House bill and substitutions of HBs 315 from yours truly, 2479 from Legarda, 4142 from Montes, and 5069 from Chuatay. So House Bill 315 served as a reference bill, as agreed by the committee on Feb 3, 2026. It substantively retains the previously approved 19th Congress substitute bill, while working and consolidating key provisions from all four filed measures and integrating stakeholder inputs received through October last year. So the bill has 50 sections organized across 11 chapters. One is a comprehensive framework architecture. So it has the full spectrum of circular economy policy, from strategy formulation to natural capital accounting, baseline metrics, governance, investment planning, eco-innovation, waste management, sustainable consumption, just transition, financing, institutional support, and monitoring. It builds on existing laws rather than creating parallel regimes. It explicitly references upon RA 9003, 11898, 12009, and the CREATE Act, RA 1005, 9212, 6969, and several others. So this is deliberate to avoid any redundancy. So we have had the circular economy with a broad membership and a clear mandate, with interagency council including 19 government agencies plus the private sector, SCSO, and LGU representatives with the clear functions that harmonize strategies, resolve conflicts, monitor compliance, and we have a report that's annual to Congress. There's 4, it's a dedicated fund with diversified sources. We have 5 regulatory sandboxes, 6 phase implementation with just transition, enforcement, graduated penalties, and LGU integration. So what we realized as the weaknesses for this is the definition section seemed bloated, which everyone was complaining about, especially on examples of bioresources, which was discussed in the first TWG, the economic self-sufficiency, which was used only once, the high climate impact sectors, and several others that were mentioned throughout the TWG. So, and in fact, National Scientist Cruz and PARMS both flagged this in the TWG. So our recommendation is to retain the definition essential to operative provisions and then defer the rest to the IRR. The 2 is the lead agency question remains politically unresolved. I think we may lean to the dev. We'll discuss this a bit later. But 3 is we can go to enforcement and penalties. It's I think we can still much strengthen this, especially it's not as clear. There are also logical sequences that are a bit broken that we will discuss with this working substitute bill. And number 4, I think choice editing term is problematic. I want to hear your comments about this. Because it was defined once, it drew significant pushback from PARMs in the industry. I remember that discussion. Maybe we can replace it with market-based measures to phase out non-environmentally acceptable products for discussion. Fifth is NCS, the one-year formulation timeline. It may be unrealistic. I think this was brought up in the TWG last time. Our recommendation is to extend it to 18 months with a preliminary framework at 9 months. So, topic for discussion as well. And then potential overlap with PENCAS in Section 7 on NCA CAP may duplicate the Philippine ecosystem and natural accounting system. So we recommend that we add an explicit harmonization of the language. So those who are familiar with the PENCAS Act, 11995, let's harmonize Section 7. The waste hierarchy and waste energy conflict is still unresolved. So I think the waste hierarchy places energy recovery fifth in priority, but it has potential conflicting issues with the WTE policies. I hope someone can talk about this. Maybe we can add a reconciliatory provision so that there are no conflicts with the WTE. There are some missing provisions which were flagged by the stakeholders, which you sent through your comments. There's no IP representation in the CEIAC. There's no explicit GOCC coordination clause, and there's no construction waste or agricultural waste provisions, and there's also no CHED chairperson in CEIAC. Nandito yung CHED, no, Mamsek? Nandito yung CHED, okay. So let's incorporate all of these in the refined bill. The 9 that we flagged is just a typo. I think it was mentioned in the last TWG also. Indigenous commutates should be indigenous communities, which is reflected. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so let us go through the working substitute bill. And then, yeah. And then please let us know section by section. So if you will see with this, with our previously refined working draft, meron po tayong 32 distinct amendments. We have with structural changes, governance and institutional definitions of terminology, strategy and planning, substantive policy, enforcement compliance, and new provisions. But let us go through section 1. Obviously, okay na po tayo dito, no? Circular Economy Act. I think may nag-comment po last time sa title, so I think we just made it clean. Everyone okay with section 1? Baka may violent reactions pa sa section 1? Wala naman? Okay. Let's go to section 2, declaration of policy. Sige, maybe go back to section 2. Declaration of policy. Anyone? Yes?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning po. Good morning, everyone. Specifically for paragraph 2 of section 2, allow me to read, Mr. Chair. The state shall foster innovation in green technologies, promote decarbonization and circular business models, enhance resource efficiency, and strengthen national security, create green jobs, and support just transition. Mr. Chair, for the phrase or for the word support, the DPWH note that the implementation for public infrastructure should be guided by the engineering, safety standards, and cost effectiveness. For the second paragraph.
Okay, thank you.
Section 2.
Well noted. Okay, thank you. We can work simultaneously while that is being inputted, but thank you. We'll note that from the DPWH. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. We just would like to add one sentence under Section 2 Declaration of Policy. Public procurement, including the green public procurement, shall be recognized as a market-based instrument to advance circular economy objectives, sustainable consumption and production, climate action, and inclusive growth. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As last paragraph.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Raquel Ortega po from the DENR
From
Climate
DNR.
Change Service.
Okay. Thank you so much. So we heard from DPWH and DNR. Anyone else?
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is Lynette Chua from Bangko Central.
From BSP, yes.
Yes. I would like to suggest that just transition be included in the definition of terms.
Okay, yes. Just transition should be. Thank you. So maybe while we are going through this, para mas may clarity din kung saan to nagaling, I just want to share a list of amendments that were cleaned up from the draft substitute bill nung Feb 18 pa tayo last? Feb 24. From Feb 24 versus their refined substitute bill today. So as structural changes, we have the overall bill structure, which was the old had 50 sections and 11 chapters. Now we have 44 sections and across 11 chapters. So ang ginawa natin, streamline natin yung consolidating redundant provisions. Section 16 to 17, which is a classification of waste and end of waste pathways, which was absorbed into the obligations. Section 19, which was waste hierarchy, and 20, waste recovery, kinonsolidate po natin yan. Section 27 to 29, which is OSH, social protection, social dialogue, minerge natin into a single section. Section 11, which is the inclusion and evaluation of covered activities, we absorbed it into Section 10 in Chapter 3. So ito yung pag-respond kay Ma'am National Scientist Cruz's recommendation in TWG1 to simplify the bill. Yung sa definition of terms, I understand, please let us know kung may naging kulang, pero dahil yung old had 40 defined terms, A through Z, then a second A to A through Z cycle, including yung bioresources, carrying capacity assessment, choice editing, circular agriculture, economic security, economic self-sufficiency, environmental risk, green design, green infrastructure, green premiums, high climate impact sectors, infrastructure needs assessment, intervention scenario, life cycle analysis, major capital project, material flow analysis, material footprint, monomaterial, non-wood forest products, permaculture, resource intensity, secondary raw materials, strategic environmental assessment, supply chain traceability, sustainable materials management, technology needs assessment, virgin material inputs, waste analysis, and characterization. So in this new na nakita po natin is 17 essential definitions A through Q, plus a catch-all phrase, which is additional technical terms necessary for the implementation of this act may be defined in the implementing rules and regulations. No? So para mas malinis po yung bill na to, if you're all amenable, because the NAST, PARMS, DTI, BPS, and NASH, especially Ma'am Cruz, all flagged the terms appeared only once and twice in the entire bill. So there were 23 plus definitions that were removed from the statute and deferred to IRR because retain lang natin yung definitions that are operative across multiple sections. So the catch-all phrase ensures that yung IRR can define technical terms without amending the law. So I just wanted to, if that's cleaner and more amenable to everyone. No? Medyo may mga, nag-agree. But let us know. I'll keep going if there are no violent reactions. Yung sa Amendment 3 natin, section renumbering, dahil meron yung old na substitute bill, sections numbered 1 to 50 with Chapter 4, which was yung source, reduction, and management, which contained in section 16 to 20, and Chapter 5, sustainable consumption, containing sections 21 to 24. Ang ginawa natin is ang sections numbered 1 to 44, and then Chapter 4 starts at section 15, and Chapter 5 at 17. So, para subsequent yung sections natin, and renumbered accordingly. So that's just like a parang semantics na yun, diba? And then we renamed Chapter 10 because Chapter 10 was titled Miscellaneous Provisions. It contained citizen participation, appropriations, enforcement, sandboxes, and phase implementation altogether. The new one, Chapter 10, titled Enforcement and Compliance, is now entitled Enforcement and Compliance, which covers Section 35 and 36. And then the miscellaneous provisions was moved to Chapter 11. So, yan na po yung miscellaneous and final provisions from sections 37 to 44. So, the reasoning behind this is just, I think, enforcement provisions deserve its own chapter for legislative clarity and signaling para at least may isang section po na talagang pang enforcement. And then we separated that from the final provisions because the standard for parang best practice, ganun po yun eh. I think from the final provisions, we have to put that into practice. So yun po yung sa structural changes ng bill. Any questions before we move? I'm talking about siguro yung ginawa natin amendments, and then we can go through section by section again, so that's a bit faster if it's okay with you. If there are no, we can go forward sa governance and institutional amendments. Ito, I want clarity on this with everyone. I think we should be, we have a consensus here that ang dati kasi, siyempre yung chairperson si Secretary of DepDev, which is co-chairs by secretaries ng DNR, DTI, and DOF. Yung bago natin, which was from our TWG, is chairperson ng DNR. No? And then vice chairperson is the secretary of DTI. So again, the rationale was from DepDev that they gave a communication. Implementation regulatory functions are more appropriate for DNR. Yung reasoning nila is DNR has an institutional mandate for environmental regulation and monitoring, while DTI as vice chair ensures industry transition leadership, and DepDev retains a permanent secretariat role through Economic Development Committee. So it preserves its policy coherence function. So yan yung, before we go to the next amendment, some memberships, I think we should resolve this. I think it's it's medyo political. This is the political sensitive issue ng bill. Right after ng TWG po natin, I convened with, hindi naman convened, but like we spoke on the plenary floor with several representatives. Nagsabi po sila na i-push talaga natin yung DepDev, and it is within their mind. Yeah. Ma'am? Ipupush ba natin na yung DepDev yung chair o kayo na lang ulit? Kaya isa sa mga foundation na to is the chairmanship. No? Nagsabing DepDev na magiging economic development committee head sila dahil it preserves that policy function. But it is in their charter that it's part of na kanilang mandate is to oversee the sustainable, actually, transition and any framework of that kind. So, yung tanong po is DNR. Ayan, gusto nyo pa maging chair o talagang i-push natin yung DepDev para DepDev. So, DepDev. Okay ba lahat, DepDev? I think all the stakeholders want DepDev, eh? No? Correct? O, sige, okay. Alright. Sige. DepDev po, and ComSec, I'm accessing subject bill na sa DNR. Okay na? DepDev, Okay, thank you. Next, membership. Yung old kasi, yung members list, merong DOST, DA, DepEd, TESTA, DILG, DICT, CCC, NSWMC, PSA, OCD, and plus 2 private sector and 2 CSOs. And 1 LGU representative, which had 10 agencies and 5 non-government. Yung bago, DepDev, DOF, DOST, DA, DepEd, CHED. Well, yung DepDev magiging chair na dito. So, they are no longer part of just being a member. But ang DepEd, CHED, TESDA, DILG, DICT, CCC, NSWMC, PSA, OCD, DSHUD, plus 2 private sector, 2 CSOs, 1 LGU, 1 IP representative, which I believe was from our TWG last time. So it now is 14 agencies and 6 non-government. Yung sa luma po is 10 agencies and 5 non-government. So dinagdag po natin dito is CHED, per CHED's formal request for representation in the CE governance. Dinagdag po natin yung DSHUD per DSHUD's position paper on construction waste and urban circular economy. DOF, regular member. Dati po siyang implied co-chair. Actually, it's baka hindi pa reflected sa bill. Okay, good, na-reflect na. 1 IP representative per House Bill 5069. Actually, galing to kay Representative Chuatay to acknowledge that. And FPIC principles. So, yung representation gaps were identified by multiple stakeholders. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. We'd just like to put forward the intention of the Department of Labor and Employment to be included as members since the circular economy touches on green jobs and employment.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. We'll add po the Department of Labor and Employment. May I ask if you submitted the position paper? Not yet. So
We'll
please
submit and we will include it in our submission.
Thank you. Please make a formal request and position paper para ma-include natin sa pag-review natin. Ha? Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Sure, no problem. Anyone have violent objections to adding Dole? Okay. Sige. Akala ko may violent objection. Pero sige, ma'am, please.
Chair, if DTI would like to suggest
Yes, po.
that since ang chairperson is DepDev, then maybe we can have DNR as the vice chair.
Okay,
instead
okay.
of DTI.
Sige.
Thank you,
That
Chair.
makes sense. Yes, po. We will move DNR as vice chair and then DTI as member. Actually, dapat kayo ngayon sa economic no? committee. Ngayon ko lang na-realize. Anyway, depende po sa atin with the committee if you agree. But we will finalize that DNR as vice chair. Sige. Okay. Anyone else sa memberships? Baka meron po dito na gustong mag-add na maging member who are not yet reflected. Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. I'll just go through the amendments and then we can go through it substantive kung may na-miss pa tayo. Para mas mabilis and baka nahiya pa yung, I don't know. Sige. Okay po. Yung GOCC coordination clause, yung dati kasi, no provision sa GOCC specifically. So yung bago natin, I think may nagsabi pero rineflect po natin dito. So we added the monitoring and enforcement functions over GOCCs under this act. I believe this is better than being supervisory, and then we course through it sa governing boards ng GOCCs. I-harmonize din natin to with Oversight Authority sa under Republic Act number 10149. I think na-mention yata sa last TWG but wala po kasing provision. So is everyone okay with this? Adding to also regulate yung GOCCs? Pero course through sa governing bodies na nila. So parang within the RA 10149. Yeah. To include GOCCs. Is everyone okay with this? So that the council can also regulate. Okay. No violent objections for now? Sige, we'll go back to it later kung meron kayong objections. And then yung sa NCS, yung dati kasi DNR in coordination with DepDev and DTI, yung sa bago, which is DepDev in coordination with DNR, DTI, DOST, DEA, GCHED, TESDA, and other relevant agencies. Galing to sa TWG1 that we agreed that DepDev should lead strategy formulation, while DNR chairs implementation oversight. So I think maganda ito for Division of Labor para maging mas explicit. And I think DA requested to be added. So, dinagdag po natin sa NCS na lead agency formulation ang DA. Okay with everyone? No? DA is added. Okay. Sige. We'll go to our other amendment sa NGA roles that we add D should. Nandito ba yung D should? Ay, yeah, yes, you said, yes po. So yung dati kasi, Section 36 listed roles for 10 agencies. Wala po kasi yung D should. So in Section 30, we add K, sa letter, Section 30, letter K, D should shall promote circular economy principles in human settlements and urban development. So thank you for submitting your formal position paper and to request that your role in construction of waste management and urban circular economy planning. So okay po tayo, hindi should, no? Yeah. Na-reflect po. Okay. Yung sa non-government agency roles through DA BAFs specified under Section 30, yung luma kasi, DA shall promote circular agriculture consistent with RA 11511 and applicable Philippine national standards. Sa bago, we made it DIA through the Bureau of Agriculture and Fishery Standards, which shall promote circular agriculture and develop standards for agriculture and fisheries. So this is from DA's formal comment, which was specified that the Bureau of Agriculture and Fishery Standards, or BAFS, is the appropriate office for developing circular agriculture standards. So we have reflected and added this institutional precision instead of a more general DA applicable under the Philippine national standards. So, hindi ba yung DA? Is DA here? Wala po yung DA dito, no? Wala. Nag-regrets. Okay, anyway. Pero reflected na po yan. Okay, so nandito tayo sa definitions and terminology amendments. Ito po yung last time na yung choice editing, section 4 and 6, I think we spent siguro 15-20 minutes dito sa choice editing na to. Yung sa old section 4G, define choice editing kasi as ang process of influencing consumer choice by removing products that may have a negative impact on the environment. So, yun po yung medyo controversial na definition used in Section 6G, which is choice editing measures for non-environmentally acceptable products. Okay, so sa bago, dinalit po natin yung definition na yun. Section 6G now reads, regulatory and market-based instruments for the phased reduction of non-environmentally acceptable products aligned with international environmental commitments and NDCs. Let's reflect po natin dito siguro. But ang rationale po kasi niyan is PARMS noted that carbon emissions can never be zero in any process, making absolute decarbonization technically impossible, and the net carbon emission reduction is more scientifically accurate and achievable as a policy goal. So, I know ang sa PARMS formally objected that choice editing implies that government restriction of the free market could compromise cost effectiveness, product safety, performance, and quality. So, we have replaced that language, and it achieves the same policy objective without that terminology. So, this is coming from yan, sa inyo. So, reflected na po yan. I think you mentioned this last also. So is everyone okay with that? So far, okay. Section 4 and 6. There's the definitions. Yeah, okay na. Actually, yung definition na deleted. Pero yung section 6G. Sa 6G. Yeah, nandyan. So, wala nang choice editing. Para rephrase na lang. Yung sa decarbonization of definition, we replaced in section 2 and 4. Yung sa luma kasi section 4N, it defined decarbonization as the process of significantly reducing or eliminating carbon dioxide or CO2 and other greenhouse gas or GHG emissions from the atmosphere. It was used in section 2 that said promote decarbonization and circular business models. For the new, we replace it with net carbon emission reduction. So it should be reflected and as defined, the process of significantly reducing the net output of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions through efficiency measures, renewable energy adoption, and carbon sequestration. So ang bago na section 2 reads, promote net carbon emission reduction in circular business models. So instead of talking about decarbonization, this is also from PARMS that noted that carbon emissions can never be zero in any process. Yung sabi ko kanina that making absolute decarbonization is technically impossible, and net carbon emission reduction is more scientifically accurate and achieves as a policy goal. So PARMS, okay po kayo dito? Because sinadjust nyo na, so okay? Okay, good. And then yung clear indigenous commutates, wala na po yung term na yun sa Section 4B dati. Finag po din ni National Scientist Cruz. We just corrected it for indigenous communities. No? So, and then the definition was deferred to IRR as part ng definition streamlining because it only comes out once. No? Are people okay with that? Do you want it in the definition? Pwede ba sa IRR na lang? Indigenous communities, medyo given naman po kasi yan eh. PARMS, you're okay? Sige. Wala pa si National Scientist Cruz, no? Okay. Is NAST here? Okay, thank you. Thank you for your inputs, especially kay Ma'am Cruz last time. Yeah, please, take note na lang. Yung sa next amendment for waste as a definition, yung dati kasing definition was section 16 and 17, which provided elaborate classification of waste in 3 categories and end of waste criteria and 4 conditions. So, ang nangyari dyan is it created a parallel waste definition framework. So what we did in section 4Q, Section 4Q, waste shall have the same meaning as defined under Republic Act 9003, which end of waste determination delegated to DNR per Section 15. Yung sa position papers ninyo, especially from DTI, PIDS, and DepDev, all of you flagged that the risk of creating a waste definition regime that parallels conflicts with RA 9003. So this cross-referencing ensures harmonization. So we made this a new definition, which is a bit more simplified. So, nandito pa sa section 4Q, if you have any violent interactions with that. Okay. We can get back to it later if you have any comments. Yung sa IRR na catch-all definition clause sa section 4. So there was no provision for determining additional terms in the IRR. We just made sure that meron pong provision na yun. So at the end of section 4, additional technical terms necessary for the implementation of this act may be defined in the IRR. So yung 23 definitions that we have deferred for the statute, once or twice na kasi lumalabas eh. So baka pwedeng IRR na lang. So, and meron namang legal basis for this. And yun nga, so I think it's a good practice. Yes, Ma'am Rose.
Yes, Mr. Chair. We just have a few reiterations po, about other terms
Yes.
that are also reflected po here sa bago pong substitute
Okay.
bill. So for the circular economy, so that's section 4A na po sa new draft. The Design Center po reiterates its recommendation that it should be an ASEAN-aligned definition.
Okay.
For our proposed amendment, so for Section 4A, Circular Economy, refers to an economy that is restorative, regenerative by design, and makes effective use of materials and energy to retain their value, with competitiveness, efficiency, and resilience at its core.
Okay. Let's align that with ASEAN. Apologies on that. Gawin natin ASEAN definition yung circular economy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
For Section 4D, for eco-design po.
D, yes, section
yes.
4D, okay.
We also have an amendment. Eco-design refers to an approach to integrating environmental considerations at the earliest possible stage. So we have to delete in the and then insert at the earliest possible stage of product conception and development, and then remove process or system to make. That's different na pala. With the aim of achieving the lowest possible environmental impact through the entire product life cycle, from the extraction of raw materials to production, distribution, use to recycling, repair, and disposal. And then, such integration must not lower the functionality, safety, or affordability of a product, nor have a negative impact on consumer health.
Yes, thank you. For the circular economy ASEAN definition, I think the last time we were able to receive from yung ASEAN,
Yes, Mr.
yung
Chair.
sa PIDS, and then another, yung UNDP, and then similar sa EPR. May we ask DNR a reaction to this? So gusto ni Design Center reflect ang ASEAN definition. DNR muna dahil kayo yung Vice Chair, wala pa yung DepDev dito.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Fatima Milian from the DNR Environmental Management Bureau. With the definition, adopting that one from the ASEAN, what is the implication to the definition as embodied under the EPR Act?
the ASEAN definition is more for competitiveness, efficiency, and resilience. But I will let Comsec, can you please, Comsec, okay lang, reiterate yung definition yan.
As per last meeting, and as communicated as well, as reiterated by DCP, the proposed definition is circular economy refers to an economy that is restorative, regenerative by design, and makes effective use of materials and energy to retain their value, with competitiveness, efficiency, and resilience at its heart.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The ASEAN definition po kasi, the ASEAN Framework for Circular Economy, explicitly states that competitiveness, efficiency, and resilience are at the heart po of the circular economy. And as such, it frames it as an industrial strategy, not merely an environmental measure. So, adopting this definition strengthens trade coherence with ASEAN partners who have aligned their circular economy policies to the same framework. So, para mas ma-integrate din po tayo sa ASEAN network.
Yeah, there are a few ways to look at it, because if we look at the Circular Economy Act and framework as more of like a mindset change with an economic angle to it, yan yung sa ASEAN rather than just a purely environmental. So it's more from environmental to economic strategy, hopefully reflected sa ASEAN. Yung ibang definitions kasi, mostly for environmental po siya. And that's why I wanted to ask siguro ang DNR your reaction to it. But yan po yung sagot sa tanong po ninyo. I know that initially yung DNR, well, kayo rin yung vice chair for this, but upon a DepDev strategy, it seems like it may be more prudent to make sure that it's a mindset change with an economic strategy. So yun yung ina-argue ng ASEAN. So anyone else want to react to this? Siguro, do you agree that it should be an environment plus an economic strategy, or a different definition altogether with UNDP? Siguro, Comsec, can you please reiterate ang UNDP definition para lang may framing po lahat? Galing to sa PIDS, diba?
We actually had 5 definitions for circular economy last meeting. For UNDP, their proposed definition is aligned with the PAP for SCP. It refers to a transformative approach that aims to shift to from the traditional linear model of take-make waste to a circular system designed to be regenerative and restorative. This involves redirecting energy and material flows towards circular pathways, repurposing waste into productive inputs, and reducing pollution and GHGs. For the PIDS, it refers to the economic model which espouses a locally appropriate approach to optimal resource utilization within the production-consumption waste management continuum of commodity systems and value chains designed to minimize residual waste and sustain the longevity and usability of materials from production, consumption, recovery, reuse, and recycling.
So I think we have to decide on a definition. And those are the siguro, trade-offs that we will be determining whether we want to, which one to adopt. So yeah, I think it's still the same when we hear on UNDP and PADS, not necessarily like an economic strategy per se, although it's a great definition. Pero yun nga, how do we want to move forward in terms of our circular economy definition? Yes, ma'am. Hey, yeah. Hey, with UNDP, yes.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I don't have a voice. But maybe just to clarify, I think our comment previously, it's more of combining the definitions, both from the EPR Act and also PAP for SCP, since these are the ones locally adopted, potentially. But I do agree that we have to highlight the economic aspect primarily, and that will also strengthen our case to have DepDev take the lead on this. But also, since we're saying that we're adopting the PAP for SCP, it may make more sense to also consider the PAP for SCP definition along with the EPR Act definition, and maybe some elements of the ASEAN framework definition, looking at competitiveness, resilience, among others, if that's possible, rather than adopting just one definition.
So you want to make our own definition that combines everything?
If that's possible, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Okay. Okay to get back on this, maybe subject style, incorporating everything, but maybe what we can agree with is, do we simply adopt the ASEAN or incorporate everything for a new definition, and then improve the subject and style? I think there's a foundational question that we need to answer. Do we adopt ASEAN or create our own, incorporating everything? Yan yung kailangan natin pagdesisyonan, and then subject to improving of the style of it. Yes?
We put in our position paper to adopt the PIDS definition. That's the simplest definition that we've found.
Okay.
Of all the 5 choices.
Okay, sige. Maybe we can get more crowdsourcing from our resource persons. So, ilan ba tayo dito? Pababataan ba natin to? Sige, yes. From NAS, no?
Good morning, Ain Torres from NAST po. No? So, as to the definition, I do agree with the fact that we, just in the essence of the operationability of the law, Mr. Chair, to adopt, sort of a more local. Just pointing out that in the Declaration of Policy in Section 2, we already invoke the ASEAN Framework on Circular Economy. So in essence, the principle is there. The alternative would be to adopt the local, citing PAP as sustainable consumption and production, and the EPR at the same time, making explicit what we mean in the ASEAN Framework on Circular Economy that we want, to be adopted in principle, which is what our resource person from the Design Center is saying, which is the, the combination of the economic and the environmental principle there.
I understand. Thank you. So, if we agree to make a local definition of our own for this bill, but keeping it simple, does everyone agree? Up until that new definition is created. So, okay lahat na we will make our own definition for this bill that is simple. Are you okay with that? Because you said ASEAN, you're pushing for ASEAN, and then Parms was pushing for PIDS.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we're amenable to that. And actually, we can prepare the consolidated if everyone agrees to it.
Okay. How about this? If you can submit a consolidated definition while we're going through, you can work, if we can, technical working group naman to, we can work on it, and then we'll go back to it later and then see the final definition. Okay lang, I know you're pushing for PIDS definition, but if we create our own that incorporates, are you okay with that?
You see, the other definitions have words that we don't understand. You need to define further the words, like what is this restorative, regenerative? Well, the PIDS definition are simple enough for us to understand what circular economy means.
Do we agree that PIDS has an economic value and strategy? Because it may not be as explicit either. maybe we can have that plus an explicit competitiveness for an economic strategy. But as resource optimization may be an economic strategy. But sige, let's get back to that. I honestly think ito ang definition of circular economy isa sa pinaka may friction naman eh. So we can go to the others. We'll get back to the definition later on when we go through the other parts. But please have it ready that a local version will be applied that is okay with everyone. Okay, anything else to definitions? Okay. I just want to say that this is the cleanest simplified that we could do. But again, and if there are others, as mentioned earlier, if it's just once or twice that were mentioned, sa IRR na lang natin lagay. Okay? So, sige, please.
Mr. Chair, per Section 4, definition of terms. Letter J, circular infrastructure. Letter K, circular procurement. Letter Q, eco-design. Eco-design. And CC, infrastructure needs assessment.
Sorry, can we use this yung flash po na substitute bill? Yes, can we go back to siguro para makita yung definitions, yes. So with this bill, packet po ng konti. Sa A, okay, yan yung circular economy definition. Next. It's circular procurement. Next, critical raw materials, eco-design, eco-innovation, enterprise, green financing, H, just transition. Next, linear economy, monomaterial, net carbon reduction, emission reduction, product life cycle, product stewardship, recovery, recycling, single-use plastic product, resource reduction, and waste. Yan po yung last. And then the additional technical terms necessary for implementation of this act will be defined sa IRR, yun yung provision. So, actually wala na po yun. Kasi hindi rin naman na mentioned throughout the bill. In fact, once lang. Okay, sige, anyone else? Yes.
Mr. Chair, yung for something that might not be mentioned in the definitions but were mentioned in subsequent sections is economically reasonable. I'm not sure if that might be something worth defining because it's talked about as an operative threshold, meaning it determines whether enterprises are legally obligated to recover waste, but it's not defined in Section 4. So the definition is only implied in the subsequent provisions. And so
just economically reasonable. Economically reasonable.
Yeah. So if this term determines the legal obligation, it probably should appear in Section 4 with the reference methodology because if there's no reference methodology, say ISO 14040 or 44 or LCA or an equivalent, courts and enforcement bodies might determine disproportionate without a standard. So it might produce arbitrary enforcement across regions and sectors. No, so that's one of the things na we want to raise.
Okay. When you say economically reasonable, you're saying that there might be problems later on legally, no? Can we ask where the lawyers here who can say talk about this economically reasonable? I mean, ma'am, I think unless you're a lawyer also, but can we ask? Does anyone want to comment on this? Yes.
I'm part of the team of the working group which oversees the implementation of the APR Act.
Okay.
And just right now, I'm having this feeling that if the more on the economic value or economic side of ECA definition will be adopted, it may weaken one of the principles of the APR Act is the
it advocates circular economy, transition from linear to circular economy. And we may be having some, how do you call this, parang we want, if ever we have to make a general definition of a CE, which will cover not just the economic aspect of it, but also highlight the environmental aspect of it, so that it's something that we can really adopt for the APR Act. The APR Act is its fourth year of implementation, and I've also noticed that for the other definitions like recycling, resource recovery, and which are defined under the IRR 2023-02 of 11898 have been shortened. So I would like to suggest as well that if we can retain those definitions provided in the IRR.
Okay, but going back to the economically reasonable, pros and cons of defining it is that if we define it to a certain level of standard that's economically reasonable, everyone will be held to that standard. And then what happens is if it's too low, then they will automatically comply. If it's too high, then they will say they'll never reach it and it'll be lead to penalties. If we leave it up to the interpretation of the industry and the courts, it may be better. This is my personal opinion. But anyone can talk about this, because the circular economy, when we talk about economically reasonable, is still being continuously defined. So if we define that right now, it may not be as adaptable later on. Yun lang yung hesitation ko dyan. Anyone want to comment about this? Do we need to define it or not? I think we don't. Economically reasonable. Yeah. Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Also representing PARMS.
Okay.
We agree with your assessment that it is it's still a contention on what economic reasonability is in terms of industry and of course what is actually reasonable. So we accept your suggestion to keep it further discussion to the IR or refer it to the IR.
Okay, thank you. Sige, thank you so much. Yes po, sorry Diana, ano po yung ibang mga sinabi po nyo na definitions?
The definition po of recovery or resource recovery, recycling, source reduction.
Okay. Yes, yung definitions po ng recovery and resource recovery, recycling. What are your comments?
Under the IRR, recycling is defined as shall refer to the treating of used or waste materials through a process of making them suitable for beneficial use and for other purpose. Medyo, siya, compared with the definition here in the draft sub-bill po. You can adopt a definition under the IRR of 11898. Yeah.
Collection, extraction, and recovery of recyclable materials in the waste stream. Ano po yung suggestions niyo?
If we can keep the definition of recycling under DAO 2023-02, the implementing rules and regulations of RA 11898.
Okay, yes.
Also,
let's keep that kasi syempre nasa IR na rin and it's already being implemented. Personally, I think we should take that if okay yung lahat. Ginagamit na rin eh.
Yes, sir. And also
Or else
resource
kasi
recovery.
magkakaproblema din sa dalawang, yung IR na to, tsaka yung bill na to. So, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yes. More about definitions. Okay.
Mr. Chair, just on the definition of source reduction, I'm not sure if this also refers to the EPR Act IRR definition, but maybe just wanted to clarify because here it refers to reduction of solid waste before it enters the waste stream. But when you talk about circular economy, it's not just about solid waste. It talks about broadly about waste and pollution. So maybe there's a need to broaden the definition here if you're applying it to circular economy as a whole, not just for APR or solid waste management. And also, I know that we're trying to limit also the definitions here, but I think it has been mentioned in a number of sections in the draft bill, green jobs and just transition. I think there was mention also to possibly also reflect the green jobs definition, just transition definition here, as well as the green jobs, which we can also refer to the Green Jobs Act definition. For the just transition, I'm not sure if we can already adopt it, but there's a Philippine just transition framework, which provides for the just transition definition for the Philippines. Maybe colleagues from CCC or I'm not sure DNR or DOLE can also respond to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So first is just transition, second is green jobs. Anyone have comments on just transition? Percy, I think we should define just transition. I think that's clear cut. Ang sa green jobs, I'm not entirely sure that we should define it. Does anyone have any comments? Sige sa just transition muna. Does anyone have a reaction to this and kung ano yung definition na gusto ninyo? Yung sa, for information of everyone, yung sa BSP, UNDP, you want it defined as transformative, people-centered shift to a low-carbon, energy-secure, and climate-resilient economy that prioritizes equity, inclusivity, and balance throughout the process without compromising environmental integrity and alignment with our Philippine, local, and international commitments. Sir. Yeah. And then, ang green jobs, sige, so just transition muna tayo. Anyone want to comment about just transition? Should we define it, and are we okay with the definition? No violent reactions. We'll keep it first there. Okay to define it. But again, we cleaned it, trimmed it down, and then if there are things that are worthy, okay. But if not, then maybe we should really put it in the IR. But for just transition, it seems that it's worthy to redefine it. So okay. Unless you have violent reactions, we'll get back to it later. Ang sa green jobs, can someone talk about ang Green Jobs Act, which I think it's 10771. Merong definition sa section 4. Sorry. Yeah. Section 4. Okay. I'd like to welcome our Vice Chairperson of the Committee on Economic Affairs, Congressman Brian Polio Manzares of FPJ Panday Banihan. Thank you. Yun, okay din. Buti may kasama na tayo dito na fellow congressman. Thanks. Okay, so anyone want to talk about the just transition or green jobs for definition? So just transition, okay na po tayo, no? Okay. Green jobs. I think it may not need to be defined. But if ever, it will be similar to the definition ng sa Green Jobs Act. Okay, so ito na. RA 10771 defines green jobs as employment that contributes to preserving or restoring the quality of the environment in the agriculture, industry, services, and administration sectors. But again, the weakness of that is it's a reference, but it doesn't define the transition process itself. So personally, I think we may or may not put it, leaning towards we don't need to. But if the committee agrees to it, then we can put it for now. If that's something na you think na kailangan talaga natin define. Anyone have any reactions to this? Defining green jobs? Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, it doesn't have to be maybe reflected there as long as the definition is consistent with the law.
Yeah.
Also, because here the law also emphasizes that green jobs should be decent jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So just to make sure that the environment and the decent job aspect also is incorporated.
Okay. Thank you. So let's see, that can be other parts of the bill or could be in the IRR even. Diba? Okay, anyone else about definition? So we can move to the next part. Yes.
Mr. Chair, on Section 4F, enterprise, so it says an establishment engaged in production, etc. So we would like to suggest to insert the phrase extraction of raw materials, since there are enterprises who are simply or involved in that process per se, and to also point out that the extraction of raw materials is cited in 4K and 4M.
Okay. 4K and 4M. Raw materials action. Okay. So what's your suggestion? To include the extraction of raw materials?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So enterprise and establishment engaged in the extraction of raw materials, production, manufacturing, etc.
Okay, well taken. Thank you. Okay, so if anything else is good, yes, Parms.
Yeah, there is a definition on single-use plastic. So we recommend that instead of defining single-use plastic, we define non-environmentally acceptable products or packaging, which is actually in the Republic Act 9003.
Yes. Okay, well taken. Thank you for noting that. We will adopt the definition from the law. Yeah. So your recommendation is to not define it?
Not define the single use.
Not define single
but
use.
Instead of single use, we define non-environmentally acceptable product or packaging, which is NAIAP.
NAIAP, okay. Yeah. Any reaction to this? Okay, kayo? Okay, so we'll take out the single-use plastic product definition and then add the NAIAP definition. For NAIAP, okay. Okay na sa ibang definitions? Huh? One more? Okay, yes.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem.
So there's recovery and recycling. So the recovery definition, and this might be fleshed out in the IRR, but the recovery includes generating energy, and recycling implies transformation into new products. So if it's kind of ambiguous in that it allows thermal combustion to be classified as recycling, if not explicitly constrained. So we would suggest whether here or in the IRR to explicitly exclude thermal combustion of recyclable materials from the definition of recycling. So probably if we could define here or in the IRR energy recovery as distinct from material recovery.
Okay. It seems that top of mind, it seems that it should be an IRR definition. If it's explicitly, excluding something like that, I think it would be best in the IRR. But what we will do is, with siguro the notes of this, COMSEC, let's just take note that when we do get to siguro plenary and moving forward, even with the committee, we shall take note of that. So thank you. Okay, so that we can move forward, we've come up with, does anyone have a circular economy definition? We were able to have one that is acceptable, that's locally defined in this bill, that aside from the ASEAN, UNDP, PIDS definition, Brian, we all decided here that we will adopt our own local that's for this bill. That's simple, but yet covers everything from not only environmental, but even an economic strategy framework. Ano yung definition natin?
Sir, it's the proposed definition is under section 4, already reflected in the proposed sub-bill. It's under section 4A, the third suggestion. Circular economy refers to an economic model that promotes the efficient and sustainable use of resources throughout the production, consumption, and waste management continuum by retaining the highest value of products, components, and materials, minimizing waste generation, and regenerating natural systems through locally appropriate strategies and pathways.
So let this sink in, and then we can get back to it later. Okay, let's go to the next amendments that we did. Aside of the definitions, let's go to the strategy and planning amendments. So for the NCS timeline, the old bill showed that we have to formulate and implement a national circular economy strategy within 1 year from the effectivity of this act. So with the new working substitute bill, what we did was we extended within 18 months from the effectivity of the act, and a preliminary framework to be released for public consultation within 9 months. So 9 months to 9 months, 9 months public consultation, and then within the 18 months, have the framework. The rationale for this is because actually multiple agencies who submitted position papers flagged that 1 year timeline is unrealistic given complex interagency coordination, baseline establishment, and stakeholder consultation. So we realized that this two-stage approach would be best. So mayroong public consultation at the same time may urgency. So top of mind, I'm not sure. It's multiple agencies have said this. So sobrang tight daw ng 1 year. So yun yung compromise with this bill. Any reactions? Okay naman? Okay, we'll move to the next. So the NCA-CAP timeline is extended, and the PENCAS harmonization. Yun po yung sinabi po natin kanina that it should be aligned with the PENCAS law. That's the Section 7. The old substitute bill said that it shall jointly formulate and implement a national natural capital accounting and capital assessment plans, or NCA-CAP, within 1 year from the effectivity of this act. And there's also no reference to the PENCAS Act. So with this, the new working substitute bill timeline is extended to 18 months, same as what was mentioned earlier. But we added that NCA-CAP shall be formulated in coordination and shall build upon the PENCAS, so the Philippine Ecosystem and Natural Capital Accounting System established under Republic Act number 11995. So, in fact, the DOST added, and the DOST is also added to the formulation team for this. Dahil nandun din sila sa PENCAS. So, in the first TWG, it flagged the potential overlap with the PENCAS Act, which is 11995. So we harmonize this and ensures that the NCA-CAP builds on rather than duplicating the existing systems. And then, as per NAST's recommendation, to add DOST in the NCA-CAP. Everyone okay with this? Okay. Yes, DNR.
Mr. Chair, for Section 7 of the refined sub-bill, can we just add these wordings? So, the DNR in coordination with INSES targets and the National Capital Accounting Capacity Assessment Plan, or the NCCAP, shall be developed, implemented, and maintained in full alignment with the Philippine Ecosystem and Natural Capital Accounting System, or the PENCAS, established under RA number 11995, and then next paragraph would be the
Nandun na po
NCCAP.
yun, ma'am.
Apo.
Yung
Ito yung
PENCAS.
sa ano, yung sa second paragraph, shall serve as a sectoral operational framework for circular economy policy and material flow monitoring within the broader PENCAS institutional structure, and shall adopt the standards, methodologies, classifications, and statistical protocols prescribed by the Philippine Statistics Authority under the PENCAS.
Okay, thank you.
Ano
Is
po
that part of
yung
the
alignment?
IRR ng PENCAS?
Actually, no. That's
Nandun po yan.
research.
Sige, okay lang pa-send sa committee yung added paragraph para malagay po natin dyan, reflected. Okay, thank you. So it's addition, no? It's not because the first paragraph you're saying is okay. Okay po kayo dyan, no? Okay, sige. Well, let's add it and then go back to it. Next is Section 2 and Section 6. In the old Working Substitute Bill, PAP for SCP, reference only in Section 35, which is a lead coordinating mechanism, and it's not in the Declaration of Policy. What we added in the Declaration of Policy is that PAP for SCP. We also added it in Section 6 of the NCS review cycle, and Section 29 with the lead coordinating mechanism, and Section 39 in the phased implementation. So, actually, galing to kay Representative Veloso Tuazon's motion to anchor the CE framework in the PAP for SCP. So, we refined it in this bill. Dinagdag lang po natin yun, galing sa kanyang motion. Okay? Everybody okay, no? Okay tayo dyan? Okay. So, yung priority sectors nasa Section 6, dinagdag po natin yan. Yung old substitute bill sa Section 6E, nakalagay kasi sectoral roadmaps for priority industries, including but not limited to plastics, construction, electronics, food and agriculture, energy and manufacturing. With the new, we added, including but not limited to, plastics, electronics, food and agriculture, energy and manufacturing, nandiyan naman yan. But ang dinagdag po natin is ang mobility and transport and tourism. So, it's under the recommendation of per UNDP to add mobility and transport, and then we expanded plastics to include plastics and packaging, which was recommendation of DTI BPS, and then construction expanded to construction and built environment per DSUD. So these were all adopted from the first technical working group. Any questions? Reactions? Okay. Yes. Yes, Ms. Rose.
Mr. Chair, we'd like to add the design and creative industries to the sectoral roadmaps, please.
Sige. Yes. Your representative, the chair of creative industries. Kailangan po natin nilagay. Thanks for pointing that out. The
Mr. Chair.
creative industries can have a circular economy framework within. Yes.
Additional amendment po for Section 6. We'd like po sana to amend the Department of Economy, Planning, or DepDev, with technical assistance from the Design Center of the Philippines, in coordination with DNR, and then tuloy na lang po yung section. So we'd like to offer our technical assistance in the development of the National Circular Economy Strategy po.
Okay. So the framing will be DepDev with
the technical assistance from the Design Center of the Philippines po.
Okay. Let's get the reactions from our resource persons. Of course, we're very glad that the Design Center is lending out their technical expertise with this. DNR, any reaction? Actually, dapat DepDev mag-react, pero again, wala sila dito. But
for the DNR, Mr. Chair, it's our pleasure to be helped by the Design Center of the Philippines, but maybe for technical assistance, right? So can that be with other development partners or partners? Not just to mention only the Design Philippines.
So you want it to be
generic,
included, but more
so that development partners also can also help us with this one.
And other relevant agencies? I think ang gusto nila maging specific technical assistance sila.
Okay. After DTI, then the Design Center, I think.
Okay, so it is the technical assistance. Yes, with all due respect to DCP, that is great. I think DNR is saying that maybe we can have a little bit more of a general definition on this, but maybe we can find a way to include the DCP but keep it general. Any Design Center, do you think?
We're okay with that, Mr. Chair, but the offer still stands. Po.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll look for a style that works. But we'll take into consideration. Any other reactions? Yes?
Maybe, Mr. Chair, just to address also the concern of DCP, maybe to also say relevant agencies and I don't know. Because
including, not limited to.
Yes, and also I think DCP is an attached agency to DTI, you know. So that's part of DTI. But actually my point is on the sectors covered under the sectoral roadmap. Is it possible to state back the sectoral roadmaps to include or to cover but not limited to? So that we're not, as we evolve also, there's space also to add other sectors that might be deemed a priority later on. Also, I'm not sure if it is clear that, for example, sectors such as textile is already covered here because it's also becoming a problematic sector when it comes to waste. So might be good also to be more explicit about it.
Okay, let's go to your first point about DTI, a design center being under DTI. A suggestion here is that we can add the provision that NCS shall identify and designate centers of excellence for circular economy design, innovation, and technical assistance. But we can also add DTI and then attach agencies and bureaus within the definition and other relevant agencies. So maybe we can add it and their attached agencies and bureaus. And then, yes, ma'am, we'll go back to that again later with the DCP. But your other suggestion is for
for the
textiles?
sectoral roadmap, to add the word or the phrase to include but not limited to plastic and packaging, construction and built environment. Yeah. And then, if possible, to add textile also.
Okay. With under section 6, right? So it will be sectoral roadmaps for plastics and packaging, construction, electronics, food, agriculture, energy, manufacturing, mobility, and transport. To construction, built environment. Oh yeah, creative industries and textiles. Yeah. Do you want to make textiles explicit or under creative industries? Okay, we'll take it for now, and then maybe we can find a bit later, unless we can decide. You mentioned you wanted to be specific about textiles because we understand textiles really when we look into garments and the use of water and and we talk about fashion, etc. It's a very big sector that could be impacted with a better circular economy framework. So I get where you're coming from. But if we talk about creative industries, textiles is under creative industries. So I was wondering if you can enlighten us, if you want, how textiles would be very specific. Or you're okay with folding it into creative industries? Yes, Kong Brian.
Well, Mr. Chair, I think one way to look at it is, for example, there are issues under the textiles industry which falls under the Committee on Agriculture, which would be outside of the purview of the Committee on Creative Industries. So it affects multiple stakeholders that may be a bit outside of the focus of creative industries. So by isolating textiles as its own item, it might actually be better so that we can include more stakeholders and also less burden for creative industries. It's just another part of the creative industries that you would have to police also under this provision. So you'll be giving more work to, I feel like, representatives from the DA and others to come in to help out with regards to textiles.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Explicitly putting textiles will give it that highlight and add DA also to it, rather than creative industries, which is under DTI. Okay. Yes?
Maybe just also a quick note that this might also include ukay-ukay. That is becoming a huge problem also in some of the areas, which becomes a dumpster for this second-hand clothing. So, yeah, I think it can go beyond the creative industry, so might be good to have a more explicit mention of that.
Yes, Kong Brian.
So regarding your claim on ukay-ukay, I understand where you're coming from, especially because of our the way our fashion industry is now, where we promote a lot of one-season items and then get sold. We get a new one that's also cheap. But what in your experience, where would that fall under in terms of jurisdiction? Because ukay is not a DA concern. It's also not a DTI. Is it a DTI concern? Or would that be more on, it's not waste management because it's a second use for an item. So in your experience, do you know which department or which industry regulates it?
I'm not too sure, Mr. Chair, but this could also be under the purview of DTI since this also covers the imported ukay-ukay.
Do we have any representatives from the DTI here?
Yeah, maybe get the representative of
I'm
DTI,
from
please.
the Department
Yes, ma'am.
of
Yeah.
Trade and Industry, but I don't know any regulation from DTI on ukay-ukay. Thank you.
Ma'am, you're Attorney Kai, no? Ano?
I'm from BPS, Bureau of Philippine Standards, sir. But we have regulations, but we don't have any
So you're,
regulations
ma'am,
on
sorry. Ma'am
Magazine
Myra, no?
din po.
Okay, from the Bureau of Philippine Standards. Okay. Okay, thanks, Kong Brian. Nagsabi lang po si Comsec na meron po kasing meeting ng 1 o'clock dito. So, we may have to leave soon. Pero, ang gagawin ko na lang is I'll finish the amendments that we've done to the working substitute bill from that last TWG. I'll go through it and then we will be working over this during the break. Mukhang 3 or 4 third and fourth technical working group pa ito. But kasi wala pa tayo sa substantive policy. But sige, if you allow me, we'll go through it and then I'll ask COMSEC to do a summary. So on the substantive policy amendments, we amended waste to energy reconciliation for section 15. Yung sa old, meron section 18 listed the waste hierarchy, which is prevention, reuse, repair, recycling, and other recovery, including energy recovery, disposal. Wala kasing reconciliation language with existing WTE policies. So we added that the waste hierarchy under this section shall be applied without prejudice to existing policies on waste to energy, which is under Republic Act 9513 and applicable DNR DOE regulations, provided that the energy recovery from waste shall remain a lower priority than prevention, reuse, repair, and recycling. So, again, this is from the first TWG. We identified the potential conflict between waste hierarchy and existing waste energy policies, which is submitted by the DNR as well of DAO 2019 to 2021, DOE Circular 2025, and the Renewable Energy Act. Meron din po tayong amendment sa section 18. The old one said that DTI shall establish standards for Philippine circular products, but we added that the eco-labeling be in section 14, that the DTI in coordination with the DA through the Bureau of Agriculture and Fishery Standards for agriculture and fishery products shall establish standards. So this is from the position paper of the DA na maging BAFS yung recognized nito. So it's a standard setting body for agriculture and feasible products. So this is also consistent with the mandate for Food Safety Act. We also amended sa DepEd curriculum integration. Dati po kasi sa section 23, it said strategic communications and environmental awareness. Environmental awareness, it did not mention curriculum integration. So with the DepEd formal position paper, in section 19, we added that DepEd shall integrate circular economy principles in the basic education curriculum. So, dinagdag po natin yan. And then, yung sa CHED, sa section 19, we added that CHED shall encourage higher education institutions to serve as living laboratories for circular economy practices. This is also from the formal position paper of CHED. On the consolidated social protection and social dialogue on previously section 27, 28, and 29, we have folded it and made it all in Section 23, which is social protection, social dialogue. So the OSH research mandate retained is within the broader social protection framework. So again, 3 of those sections put into one. On the sustainable pricing and market protection language, the old one in Section 22, it had pricing transparency in 4 subsections, A to D, which was specifically on greenwashing prevention, transparency guidelines, market mechanisms, and fiscal studies. With the new Section 18, it streamlines to core principle with a critical safeguard clause, and it retained nothing in this section shall be construed as authorizing price controls or regulatory measures that distort market competition. So, filinag po ito ng PARMS and the USABC for a market protection clause. So, and then we are going to note that ang detailed pricing guidelines will be deferred to the IRR. IR na ito. So, ayun. And the last part, which will be sa enforcement and compliance amendments. So we completely redrafted the enforcement section as mentioned at the opening remarks. The new Section 35, which has A, the first violation is a written warning and compliance order with prescribed corrective period. B, second violation or failure to comply is 50,000 to 500,000. This is also reflected in the previous. But it is based on severity, frequency, environmental impact, and economic benefit from non-compliance. And then C is suspension or cancellation of permits. And then D is repeat or willful violation is disqualification from incentives and escalating penalties. So this is a complete redraft, which we can talk about next, but I just wanted to let you know. And then yung LGU sanctions, we separated it into its own section, own paragraph. Meron pong due process requirement explicitly stated. So the LGU sanctions are constitutionally distinct from enterprise penalties. So when we regulate for private sector, the LGU is a bit different. Dahil merong fiscal relations between national and local government, and it has to be clearly defined and ensure due process. Yung sa enforcement chapter na created in chapter 10, so dating enforcement section 14 ito and regulatory sandbox section 45, section 44 and section 45, we added it into our miscellaneous provisions sa chapter 10. Now section 35, enforcement penalties, and section 36, which is regulatory sandboxes. So this actually comes from PIDS's concern that the bill needs stronger enforcement signaling. So, yan po yung nalagay natin. And last, the new provisions, please.
Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, on section 36. May I ask who submitted the suggestion for amendments to section 36? If anyone did, or is this the original?
This is new from PIDS.
Is there a representative here from... What's it? PIDS?
PIDS, yeah.
What's PIDS?
Philippine Institute for Development Studies.
Okay. Well, there's no representative. In my experience, kasi working with regulatory sandboxes, it's better if a single agency handles it. Like, for example, when it came to the fintech sector, the regulatory sandbox was under the BSP. So you had one agency that was responsible, which streamlined also the regulatory processes for the sandbox and applicants for the sandbox. If you have too many people handling the sandbox, there's too much regulatory red tape and mababagalan yung proseso, lalo na for yung mga startups in these industries. My suggestion is that we pick a single agency that will be in charge of regulatory sandboxes for green industry. But again, I throw that to our resource persons if they agree or they have their reservations. Because whenever you have these multi-stakeholder technical working groups or organizations, tingnan mo, pag kulang yung isa, they can't move. And the whole point of a startup economy is it has to move quickly. If the sandbox is not able to move quickly, then there's no point in even having a sandbox to begin with.
Okay, thank you, Kong Brian. We'll definitely note that and get back to PIDS about this. But yeah, and thanks so much for that, because we will be we'll have to see if it's a regulatory sandbox under the circular economy, whether that will be DepDev or DNR.
Right. We'll submit
refolded
an
into
amendment, and then we'll submit it to you, and hopefully
Sounds
we
good.
can debate it in the next technical working group. But
Yeah.
for those present resource persons, please note that I will bring this up in the next technical working group, and if you could present your positions on the matter, that would be very helpful for us as well. But yeah, speaking as an entrepreneur and as someone who works with the startup industry, I really do caution against having too many chefs in the kitchen, especially when it comes to sandboxes.
All right, thank you so much, Kong Brian. Nagsabi po si Comsec sa akin na nandito na daw yung next committee. So, again, in closing, thank you so much. Gusto mo pa mag-summarize? Huwag na. Sige. Thank you to everyone. There are some new provisions added that I didn't get to speak about, but certainly please look over them, and we will see you at the next technical working group. So maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.